Seasonality is key. Cycles are key. From the specific stock perspective, looking back, if the investment is a long-term investment, looking back 5 years is key to better understand the price action, price movement. Stocks do trade in patterns, and so do gold and bonds, and the trend is always your friend.
Welcome to the My Future Business Show, where we get you in front of your best audience and keep you there. Not only are we interviewing the biggest names in business to help you become even more successful, we're inviting you to book your spot on the show to help you grow your business. So at the end of the call, make sure you fill in the interview application form at myfuturebusiness.com/interviews. Hi, it's Rick Nuske and welcome back to the My Future Business Show. On today's show, I'm with Gus Dahleh, and he is a real estate entrepreneur at GUS DAHLEH. Now, welcome to the show, Gus.
Hello, how are you today?
Very well. Now, Gus and I were just talking a little bit offline about the current situation, the current state of the world, if you like, and it's not looking as rosy as it used to be, but I'm sure that there's some sun peeking over the horizon, and we're going to be talking a little bit about not only that and how things are rolling out across the world. We're going to be talking about real estate, business stocks, and futures. But before we do that, Gus, what I really enjoy doing is learning a little bit more about my guests before we go into the core of the call. Things like where you live, what you like doing, and the things that you do when you're not actually focused on delivering client services.
Okay, so I reside in Chicago, Illinois, as well as Corona del Mar, California. Primary focus is real estate development with an emphasis on commercial as well as residential redevelopment. Primarily, we focus on distressed assets and look to stabilize assets with either credit tenants or develop into just a different types of uses. In addition to that, we also have a focus within the financial markets, where we primarily trade gold and gold and 30-year Treasury bond options, and also futures throughout the course of the year, and focus on seasonality and cycle type analysis.
Fantastic. Now, we were talking a little bit earlier about what you like to do in your spare time. You enjoy sports?
I do. I actually enjoy working out as well as all types of sports.
And it's a good context to have, I think, Gus, because at the end of the day, if you're not balanced between your mind and your body, you're not likely to be performing at your peak. Now, with the world in its current state, I wonder how much is this affecting your business directly, and what are some of the countermeasures that you're putting in place to get through this time?
Yeah, I think with these with this economic short-term downturn, I like to call it. I anticipate a V-shaped recovery, and I'm looking to capture as many opportunities as possible here within the next, quarter. I strongly believe with all of the funding that the government's injecting into the system, the key here is, what's going to make this recovery different from any other recovery is the interest rates. With the current interest rate environment, in the 3%, low threes, that is going to basically create enough momentum for the economy to come out of this, short-term downturn, if you want to call it a downturn.
Yeah.
And as we move into, this third and fourth quarters, I think this is all going to be a short-lived memory of just some 3 to 6 months of pain.
Yes.
What makes this environment different than any other environment is, if you recall our last economic downturn in 2008 during the credit crisis, interest rates were near 7%. So it was a little more difficult. That downturn affected our banking and financial systems, which crippled our economies. I think now there are certain industries that will be negatively impacted, but the core of our system, which is our banking and financial systems, should allow the real estate market to continue to be stabilized, and we likely are not to see any growth short term, but again, I think with the low interest rate environment, everything will be back to normal, and we will continue on with this V-shaped recovery.
Thank you very much for that feedback. It's great insight. Now, I wonder, do you think, you talk about this short-term recovery, do you think there will be anything that fundamentally changes in your sector to, I guess, counteract any of the possibilities that something like this might occur again?
Yeah, well, I think what's going to be impacted the most is, obviously certain types of retail that, with the redevelopment that I have done and continue to do, the key is, for example, in a retail center, getting a better understanding and making sure that the tenant mix is diversified enough. So if we were to get hit with another pandemic,
Mm-hmm.
that the real estate is not at risk, or your portfolio is protected. Again, I think diversification within a retail center, for example, is key, or focusing in on specific types of markets.
Yeah.
For example, one of my strengths is the relationships I have with these publicly traded REITs, where I sell antenna revenue streams to, which are the likes of Sprint, T-Mobile, Verizon. These, if you take a close look at where these companies are currently operating and trading, some of these companies just recently hit 52-week and all-time highs because that industry is protected against the pandemic. Moving forward, I just completed a self-storage redevelopment in Corona Del Mar, California, where that industry is also protected against the pandemic. And if you look at the financial performance of, Extra Space Storage, CUBESMART, Public Storage, you'll begin to see that these companies have been affected from a very minor perspective as it relates to, this pandemic. So
Yeah.
I think the key moving forward is to focus in on, if it's redeveloping commercial, making sure that you're focusing in on specific sectors. And if you're focusing in on residential redevelopment, I think, most parts of the country, you're going to see stable, if not, slightly declining prices. But however, if you're focused in on markets that are in their own little bubble, where higher end, that typically in a downturn or a short-term downturn, you're going to see the higher end less affected in specific markets. And specifically, I'm talking in California.
Yes, fantastic feedback. Once again, thank you so much, Gus. Now, in this time where there seems to be a sentiment of fear and contraction, and people are not pulling out their wallets, what would you say to that? Would you say to, push through the fear and be smart about this, maybe take this as an opportunity to gain some really good stocks at low prices?
From my perspective, this is going to be a quick recovery. So with that said, there's a very short window of opportunity to capture, companies that are down 80, 90%, specifically that are trading under $10.
Mm-hmm. That's pretty low, isn't it?
It is, but for example, you look at companies like Hertz,
Yeah.
Hertz Corporation, which has a book value, if they were to liquidate all of their assets right now, has a book value of approximately $13 a share. And the company's recently trading, I think on Friday, closed at about $5.10. So when you look at the different industries that are, where you can capture opportunity, you're looking at the book value. You're also looking at where was the stock trading potentially, but where was it trading back in early February? Well, it was trading at $20, which, if you look at I think the low was sometime in mid to late March. The stock was down almost 80% from its high just less than 60 days ago. So it's important to, again, be very selective in what you're doing, but the window of opportunity is going to be short term, and it's here now.
Yeah, absolutely. So if anybody's listening to this, You might want to reach out to Gus and talk with him about this now. I'm going to provide all the links back to Gus at the end of the call. But Gus, I'd love to now shift gears and focus a little bit on you and how this all started out for you as an entrepreneur in real estate. Could you tell us a little bit about your journey and how you got into this field?
Yeah, well, the journey began at the end, or at the beginning, I would say in the beginning of the last economic credit financial crisis.
Yeah.
In 2008 and 2009. In 2010, I was approached with an opportunity to take over the bank's position on a note on a 13-story building in a suburb of Illinois, right along the Lake Michigan, and was purchasing basically the bank's position, which was approximately $7 million for 10 cents on the dollar. Acquired the bank's position, began to stabilize the asset, and began to better understand capturing real estate opportunities with distressed assets. Moving along, began to acquire more opportunities from banks that were looking to sell off bad debt, deals that have gone into foreclosure, deals that were distressed, and began to build relationships with large, publicly traded credit tenants that I was able to plug into several of my retail real estate portfolios.
That's fantastic. I wonder, from a mindset perspective, as an entrepreneur, did you find it just natural for you to make this step into this field, or is it something that you had to, I guess, nurture this mindset about how to go about this process?
Yeah, so my background is finance, economics, and financials, banking. So I was able to tie in the experience, my previous experience over the last 25, 30 years, and basically tie it into problem solving, how to stabilize a distressed asset, how to create an opportunity, and build relationships, with several key banks, receivers, bankruptcy attorneys, and different real estate companies, brokers, commercial and residential, throughout the industry that helped, get me to where I'm at today.
Yeah, that was, you talked about a residential as well. I was wondering if it was both commercial and residential. And if it is, what are the differences in approach between the two? Are there any?
There are. With a residential, typically you're going to get a distressed asset that needs updating, need to get an architect involved to redesign the floor plan of the, for example, of a single family residence. And then from there, you're basically taking it back out to market, either with a tenant that is looking for rental income, or you're taking it back out to market to market the new product. On the commercial side, you're dealing with, potentially 100,000 square foot empty building that needs to be re-tenanted with tenants. It could typically be one tenant, two or three big box tenants, typically retailers, and then getting the improvements needed to stabilize the asset, and then taking it back out to market for investors looking to capture, a 6-7% annual return on their monies, and moving on.
I wonder what I'm hearing is I'm hearing a thread of process, a need for systems, because there would be a lot of work that would go into, for example, the residential component in refurbishing, relaying out, getting the architect. You must have a network of people and, pretty solid systems in place. What could you tell us a little bit about systems?
Yeah, so our design build team consists of architects, contractors, basically the entire system or teams that are needed in order to stabilize these assets. With some of the real estate that I currently own, We've got either building engineers that handle these complex systems in office buildings that are 70, 90,000 square feet, or You've got just a basic maintenance engineer that, will manage a, 100-unit multifamily building and basically adhere to all the needs of the tenants that are, that have any issues and that need to be resolved.
Yeah, thank you very much for sharing this wonderful content. Just so you're aware, Gus, the My Future Business audience are startup entrepreneurs and small to existing medium-sized business owners, and a lot of the time they're looking for the early phase steps. They're looking for that mindset, and I wonder if you wind back and you say to yourself, well, this was the one key thing that if I'd only known back then would have helped me a great deal. I wonder if you could share a little bit about your early journey and what somebody like that just starting out should be thinking about and doing.
Yeah, I think the key to, if I look back to the beginning stages of my real estate career in redevelopment, I think the key is to have the, lending relationships in place that can reduce your debt service, because that's really the key here. In addition to that, understanding the legal aspects of how to, the acquisition of a deal and working closely with, your attorney in terms of direction and giving guidance. And I think over the last 10 years of at least in the real estate development aspect of the business, I've basically learned the legal aspects of what it takes to take a deal from start to finish. And again, this could be with real estate. There is litigation that can either offer some significant upside to a deal, but I think the key is making sure that you're protected, having the lending aspect of it in place, making sure you minimize your debt service, and also, the legal aspect of having a good team of attorneys behind you is key.
Absolutely, yeah. It seems to be a very strong focus on relationships, networks of people, having systems in place now. Given what's happening with the world, we seem to be shifting gears and going primarily online to do a lot of our business. Is that affecting you? Is that something that you've started to do more right at the moment, is take things online, at least for the short term?
Yeah, I think the good thing is that construction is considered an essential service. So with the coronavirus pandemic, peaking, even prior to the pandemic peaking, we were, the governor's orders considered construction an essential service, and we haven't lost any steam, and fortunately enough, we're able to continue to capture new opportunities and new deals and take advantage of this downturn.
And that's the thing, isn't it? A lot of people are so locked onto the media. With media and taking in content, how have you navigated this personally? Do you just shut all of that out? How does a day look like for you in that regard?
Yeah, I've decided that turning on the TV and listening to all of this, media of how the world's ending, all the purveyors and naysayers talking about how the world is ending.
Yeah.
This is, we've been through this before. The world isn't ending. We went through this in 2008 and 2009, and, within a couple years, and again, that downturn was a lot more significant because it affected our financial and banking system. This downturn, I promise you, we're going to be looking back third, fourth quarter, late to third quarter, early fourth quarter, and by the end of the year, going to be looking back, hoping and hopefully, we've captured a lot more opportunities, and again, this is going to be a small window of opportunity, and you need to move forward.
Yeah, thank you. I love technology. I know that the My Future Business audience loves technology. I know that a lot of our trading can be done online. Do you have a particular suite of software that you recommend or use to run much of your business? Is there some sort of a technology stack that you use?
Yeah, with real estate, again, it's relationships. Obviously, you can research any information you want in this environment through Google or through any search engine. But shifting gears to the trading aspect of it, prior to the pandemic, moving forward, TradeStation is one of the technologies that I use to chart, gold and 30-year Treasury bond futures, and it's a very strong system and gets the job done.
You talked about gold just momentarily then, and it made me think: is that still up on the top of the hit list, or is it silver? What are the main precious metals that we should be looking at if we're going to be investing in them?
Well, gold is the stronger of the two. Silver is weaker than gold. Gold just recently made a run for 1,800.
Mm-hmm.
I think as of Friday, we were trading right around $1,700 an ounce. I think through the next 30 days, as we head into the end of May, gold will begin to continue a decline, which will then create another opportunity for gold to head higher going into the early to mid third quarter. And then seasonally, gold will continue its decline through the holidays and then begin another upward move. So again, that's my perspective on the metals.
Yes, thank you. And what I'm taking from that when you're talking, you do know a lot about what's happening, the trends of it. How important is history for you, and how far back do you look for any particular stock? Does it vary?
It does. So typically, my analysis will go back 20 years, potentially even 30 to 40 years when I'm tracking the gold and 30-year Treasury bond. Seasonality is key. Cycles are key. From the specific stocks perspective, looking back, if the investment is a long-term investment, looking back 5 years is key to better understand the price action, price movement.
Mm-hmm.
Stocks do trade in patterns, and so do gold and bonds. And the trend is always your friend.
The trend is always your friend. That rhymes. That's certainly some sage advice now. And I'd love to learn a little bit more about futures. Tell us a little bit about the futures market.
Yeah, the futures market is a market that trades 24 hours for the most part. I mean, the gold and 30-year Treasury bond are my primary focus. As we all know, these two futures are basically impacted by daily news throughout the world.
Yeah.
And these two financial instruments are traded throughout the world. That's what makes them special.
Absolutely. At least from our government's perspective, they're now going into bonds, and basically people overseas are buying parts of our country. Is that what we're talking about here? Is that part of this? How does that work, the bonds component?
Yes. So just recently, the Federal Reserve has been buying, I think it was, about $100 billion of Treasury bonds to keep the economy stable and continue to pump money into the economy. I think late Friday they decided, or they put out a press release that they were going to be cutting their bond purchases by 50% or in half.
Mm-hmm.
So again, the Federal Reserve is a big buyer of the U.S. Treasury bond. China, Russia, the Middle East is as well. So all of these, what makes these two financial instruments unique is that they're widely traded within the world, throughout the world on a daily basis.
Yeah, we talk about having a global economic viewpoint, but we also talk about country-specific economies. How important do you think, with everything that's going on, do you think that we should be looking to make our homeland far more self-sufficient? Do you think the global economy is as important, or do you think things might change, at least the perspective of how the global economy works in the future?
Well, I think, obviously the U.S. is one of the strongest economies in the world, but we do need our partners in China and, the Middle East, and then also in Russia to continue to, import and export to create, basically make the U.S. even stronger than where we are at today. It is very important.
You've clearly got a great deal of knowledge to share with the world now. If anybody who wants to learn a little bit more about you and the things you do, and maybe they're seeking a little bit of help, where are they likely to find you, Gus?
You could find me on LinkedIn, on Twitter. I'm here to help provide direction.
Fantastic. Well, look, everybody who's on the call today, you've heard it with your own two ears that there's lots of dynamics going on in the world at the moment. There's lots of opportunity, whereas others might stick their head in the sand and say, hey, look, now's not the time. Maybe it is the time. So if you want to learn more about how to get the best out of our current situation, I'd recommend reaching out to Gus, and I will be making links back to Gus so you can contact him directly. Gus, thank you so very much for spending some time with me on the My Future Business show today.
Thank you, Rick.
Thanks for joining us today. If you enjoyed the call, then make sure to subscribe, leave a comment, share us with your friends, and book your spot on the show at myfuturebusiness.com/interviews. And if you're looking for solutions that will help grow your business, then visit myfuturebusiness.com/shop.